Hello and welcome back to the Shifting Schools podcast. My name is Trisha Friedman, and if you've been listening along with us this summer, you know that Jeff and I are focused on the power of play. Now, part of why we really want to focus on the power of play is not only because we know that it is good for us, but we also know that play is a very important way for children and learners really of all ages to learn about the fine art of making choices, to become leaders in our own lives. We are talking today with special guest Nawal Qarooni, who's got a brand new book out that really helped me think more about what we can do to help educate the broader community about the value of play and to set them up to enjoy it. Nawal's book is entitled Nourishing Caregiver Collaborations, Elevating Home Experiences and Classroom Practices for Collective Care. Now, folks, this is one of my favorite professional development books of the year. So please be sure to head over to the show notes to learn more about it. We also, in this episode, talk about the value of libraries as community centers and spaces for us to go and get play completely free. We dig into that in this conversation, and perhaps it's actually not a surprise that we spend a little bit of time exploring the power of libraries when it comes to play, because our special guest is also on the advisory board for the Library of Congress Literacy Awards. Our guest asked for me to leave a link for you to learn more about that. So again, please check that out in the show notes as well. Before we dig into this week's conversation, we do have a quick word from our incredible show sponsors.
Discover the power of acknowledgement with Libra. In a world where every staff member's dedication shapes the future, recognizing their efforts becomes our mission. Libra transforms your school into a place where achievements, big and small, are celebrated daily, creating a ripple effect of motivation and pride. Join the recognition revolution with Libra, where every achievement is a cause for celebration. For more information and a free demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com today. Librarians, meet MacEnvision, the future of library management. With a student-centered design, MacEnvision's intuitive interface and seamless navigation ensures that your students find the information they need quickly and effortlessly. Discover how MacEnvision can transform your school at macen.com/MacEnvision.
All right. With that, let's dig into this week's conversation to explore more about what it might mean to help children engage as decision makers, to really engage their autonomy and to think more about why that autonomy matters so much. Please welcome to the show, Nawal Qarooni. So excited to be speaking with you. You've authored what's been one of my favorite books of the year. The book is entitled Nourishing Caregiver Collaborations. And I'm going to do that strange thing of quoting directly back to you from the book. Listeners, those of you with your copy, this is on page 140, where you wrote, "So much of parenting includes offering choice to our children. We cannot say that kids are the leaders of tomorrow with one breath while denying them opportunities to lead with the next." I was like, there is no highlighter bright enough for me on that passage. That is so important. This summer on the show, of course, we're focusing on play and the opportunity for children to learn how to make decisions through play. Can you say more about, I feel like it's a fair question because you talk about education and your home life throughout your book. What does that look like for you in your personal practice?
So it's harder than one would think, right? Giving kids choice. But as a mother and as a caregiver, I'm constantly trying to think when in the day I can give kids time to make their own decisions. Actually, my 5-year-old said this to me the other day. Why do all the adults make all the decisions for what we do every day? And that is really the crux of it, is that little humans don't have a chance to make decisions on almost anything. Not what they wear, not what they eat, not where they live, which is why we have such this heavy responsibility as adults. So I try to give at least one choice. Would you like to wear this or would you like to wear this? Or for the order of operations, would you like to do this first or do this first? My daughter also reminds me that each child needs a yes day periodically, which is when they get to make all the decisions, and it's yes to everything that they choose in the day within reason and with healthy choices, which they might not make automatically and without some guidance. But as an educator, I think the choice chapter is so much fun in my book because I brainstormed all the ways and all that I've seen in my schools, ways that educators like relinquish control. And relinquishing control in the classroom might mean not thinking that a quiet classroom is the best classroom. Relinquishing control might mean giving kids choice in topic of writing, but even more than that, in the kind of expression of writing. So what does this learning compel you to create? It doesn't necessarily need to be an essay that everybody writes and it looks the same, but did you want to create something visual as a result? Does this compel you to just take some notes in a web? Does this make you want to make a slide or two or video record your voice? We get to make these choices. We get to make these choices as adults all the time for how we use our learning, for how we want to learn, for what we want to read, what genre we want to read, if we want to abandon a book. Of course, our climate is really funky right now when it comes to reading choice and independent reading, but I still believe that kids have to have choices.
And I would say, honestly, when I think back on my own childhood, I was sharing this recently with my wife. Like, one of my fondest summertime memories was just deciding to get on my bike, go to the local library, pick out whatever I wanted to read. I'd load up that basket on my bike, come home and read it. And I didn't have anybody, what is that? Is that book dangerous or harmful or all of that? And that is in part why to this day, all those years later, I'm still an avid reader. And that has been so beneficial for me personally, for me professionally. And I simply think you are not going to create lifelong readers. And I do think read is a form of play. You will not create lifelong readers if you are trying to control them.
Well, that's true of any kind of control when it comes to reading. You have families who think also that graphic novels doesn't count as rigorous reading, so that we have to do some unlearning around that, or audiobooks is not reading. But this chapter has basically like a love letter to libraries in it because I'm obsessed with my local library and for the children as well, and the librarians there who get to know the kids and their choices and their kind of like nuanced desires so well. In everywhere we've lived, my kids have gotten to know the librarians through the librarians' keen observations of what they've been taking out, and then they hold things for them and that relationship can only be built by visiting. And I think choice is also one of those buzzwords alongside agency for our classroom practices, but it has to lead to tangible things that you're actually doing differently in the classroom. Is it choice over seating? Is it choice over the group or the person that you're collaborating with? Is it like, it's again one of those questions that should bleed into everything that you do in the classroom. Have I given my children some degree of choice within each of these parts and structures in my classroom? Choice over what's on the walls, choice over when it should get rotated, choice over whether it's useful or not, because then the kids will want to do it more. They will want to learn. They are more motivated to. It doesn't mean that there aren't some have to do's, right? Some must do's and may do's, of course, or within reason. If you feel uncomfortable relinquishing full control in the classroom, then isolate it down to a smaller choice within a genre or within something smaller, bite-sized. It doesn't need to be a massive amount, but start small and continue to offer choice as you move forward. I think it feels messy sometimes.
But that's where I think having that maybe willingness or mindset to be playful can be really useful, because Of course, I think any change that we try to initiate personally or professionally, it is going to be a little bit messy. Maybe not always, maybe only in the beginning. But I think that's where, if you've learned where play can be an asset for you, I think mess is maybe not as stressful.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm thinking about, I'm also a huge advocate for libraries. I also love my local library, and I feel like that's a great space. If folks are saying this summer, maybe play is an asset to me as an educator, where can I go to do this that's not going to ask me to spend $2,000 or take a whole week of my time? I often will point folks to your local library. They have programs that a lot of people I find are not aware of. My local library has a board game hour each week for adults. I'm wondering if you might want to say a little bit more about why you felt it was so important to advocate for libraries, and how there may be also a space that kind of touches on some of the themes in your book.
Listen, it's completely true. Libraries are community centers. They are community centers. They're cooling centers, and you can borrow more than just a book at a library. You can borrow all kinds of things. I heard that, I think it's in DC, you can check out baking materials alongside a cookbook in these kind of packages. In Chicago, they make these like exploratory kits in addition to all these kind of books about nature that are like seasonally organized, so that depending on the season, you can take the whole backpack as a family. There's like magnifying glasses and flashlights and all kinds of additional materials. There are Lego hours, there are sewing hours. It's totally social. It's where I go to print on purpose so that I can go and be social a little bit. I just think the community aspect of the library and the personal nature of the choice and the play, it's just like super invaluable, and it's free at a library. It's part of our rights, I think. Though library funding is being majorly cut here in New York City, it's still my kind of go-to place.
Thank you for tuning in to Shifting Schools. Let's pause our discussion to spotlight Libra HQ, a breakthrough in using AI to deepen connections within organizations. Imagine an environment where every staff member feels truly seen and valued. This is the heart of Libra's mission. Libra transforms how leaders celebrate and recognize the personal and professional milestones of their team members. It's not just about reminders. Libra's AI dives deeper, offering insight into enhanced team cohesion and promote a culture where support and acknowledgement are paramount. Picture a school where every individual is acknowledged, from work achievements to personal victories, creating a culture of appreciation in just minutes a day. In these challenging times, where the demands on educators have never been higher, Libra offers a way for school leaders to lead with true empathy and compassion, ensuring every team member feels an integral part of their community's success. Discover how Libra can revolutionize your school's culture. For a demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com. Let's build a future where every educator and staff member feels connected and valued. And now, let's get back to our conversation.
And all of those services that you are talking about, I often will interview librarians, and they all say, you have to use these services if we want to keep them. So again, like this summer, it's a great time for you to learn more about the programs, to use them so that hopefully they are there, and to advocate for their funding. I'm glad that you brought that up. Your book does a super amazing job of inviting educators to remember, hey, certain things are not always clear to the caregivers in our school communities. When it comes to valuing play in the classroom, this is one that I think we still have not necessarily made super clear to folks. What are you thinking, or what are you wishing that maybe educators could do to help the broader community understand what makes play so valuable?
I think inviting families into spaces to play is like a very easy way to then name for families, this is the kind of learning that just happened, or this is the kind of learning that I had just observed. This kind of bleeds into my part on the book about family lab sites and inviting families into your space to do something, a shared experience with your kiddos, a shared literacy experience. That can be a learning experience connected to play. That can be building a mandala together. That can be that, poof, you're going to disappear, because then you can also talk about process. But I think to communicate with families, they need to participate. They need to join their kids in doing something in front of you or with you, not in an evaluative way, not in a high stakes kind of stressful way where we are imparting all kinds of information because it's, I don't know, academic night, but in a way that then can really easily be translated into a tip. Extend this into your home, extend this into the time that you have with your kid. This is why this is so valuable. Families want time to spend with their children. They want to carve out time to spend with their children. So in family lab sites, you have to play with, no pun intended, you have to try out different times that families do better in the classroom. So try once after drop off, try once right before pickup, try in the middle of the day, see which families you catch. Invite them to come into the classroom space, 20 minutes, not a long time. Model something that they can play/do alongside their kid. Make it a gradual release of responsibility where you try something with a kid or about your life, or, for example, playing I Spy and trying to find something in an image, right? And noticing, wondering, and hyper analyzing, over analyzing a piece of art, right? Then you have the families do it with their children. And then you practice it with other picture books. It can be playful. It can be like, grab another book. It's a space where there's no right or wrong. And then you leave the families with a tip or two. I think those family lab sites are really fun and easily integratable, low stakes, like high joy moments that you can bring into your everyday fabric across the calendar year. And so with my schools, I tend to make sure this is just one piece of the puzzle. So when we're talking about all the different ways we communicate and collaborate with families, make sure that family lab sites are on your list of ways that we bring families into the fold so that you can try, like trial and error, what time of day works, what type of kind of play works, and then what lesson or sneaky little way that you can extend it into their daily practice or their weekly practice with their kids. I love that. It's like maybe the most fun part of my book.
Well, it really had me thinking too. I do think we are in this moment where lots of folks are beginning to, at a philosophical level, really talk about what is the point of an education, right? Generative AI, I think, is asking us to question the relevance of a lot of our assessments that maybe for a long time already have not been super relevant. And so what is the point? What do we want education to mean in our society? And I think, honestly, when you're talking about sparking joy, I really think, what would we do differently if bringing families joy was an essential part of our mission? What might we change, big and small, right? And I think when you're talking about just being a little bit of a platform, a diving board into bringing play home, connecting with other people through play, it is really important, I think. We're talking about the mental health crisis we're in, the loneliness epidemic that we're in. Play is a connector. And one of the resources, actually, that when I'm talking to friends and neighbors and parents and caregivers who are totally new to this concept of what AI is going to mean for society, one of the resources that I point them to, it's a documentary that's freely available on YouTube. It's called AlphaGo. And it's all about how an AI program learned to play the board game Go. And I know maybe you're thinking, Trisha, a documentary about AI and a board game? Snoozeville. But I promise you, this has been one of those recommendations. Everybody has been like, wow. It's
Really?
very family friendly. And also, I think, encourages people to learn more about playing that board game. But yeah, I think if play were part of our objective, what might that mean for the way that we see our work, the way that we approach it? And if you pick up the newspaper today, I feel like everything is pointing us towards education needs to be thinking about the importance of joy, pleasure, care in a completely new way.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the arcane way of education is very much producing fill in the blank children, that there's only one way of creating and making, and the metrics are really narrow. And I think real ingenuity happens with like creativity, and creativity does not come without some degree of mistake making and play and mess. And you're talking about that, just talking about families and coming together. I've been reading a ton about just kids on the telephone and kids on social media and kids like screen time, because I have a 13-year-old who I tried to have a lot of boundaries around her first foray into having a telephone for traveling to and from school on her own. But then you slowly start losing that control. And there's just a lot to be said around family screen time and parental screen time, indicating how much their kids will also then be connected to the screen. And so I just think, so much value in inviting families to put their phones down and play alongside their kids. So that family lab site, mostly what teachers who observe that in a fishbowl, what they notice is the joy. And it's because it's such a short period of time where they have their full attention on their children. They're like slowing down and they're just doing something alongside their kids that like won't produce a result, that doesn't produce something that they're going to take away, that they have to build or make, but it is just like play for the purpose of play, creation and mess just for the purpose of the process. And I would love personally those invitations as a mother and a caregiver in my kids' schools. It feels actually annoying when you get invited to these things as juggling so many things that we juggle. But then when you're there, you are so grateful because somebody forced you to put that on your calendar and somebody forced you to put your phone down and look at your children. There's like a boatload of research to show how the older the kids get, the less time we have talking to them across a week, or like with your partner or your caregiver. Like most couples who have children talk or connect 20 to 30 minutes a week
Ooh.
about non-children things.
Wow.
Right. And so there's so much to be said for put technology down, put aside your to-do list. It's a little bit of the kind of like mindfulness, what you take to the mat. Don't chew on your thoughts when you go to yoga. I do a lot of yoga. It's a little bit of that, but it's like for caregiving and for being alongside your kids. There is value in it. Families only realize it when they engage in it. And there's like an observer to say, hey, this is what you just did. This was so valuable because here, reflect on how that felt.
Mackin Educational Resources has once again partnered with us for our summer mini-series. Thank you to Mackin for continuing to be a partner of the Shifting Schools community. Their new product, Mackin Vision, is the future of library management. Created with your students' need at the forefront, Mackin Vision offers a user-friendly interface that simplifies navigation, making it easy for students to find what they need. This state-of-the-art system includes features like intuitive browsing, secure multi-level access, multimedia searching, and whole school rostering. Additionally, it has a teacher library portal, aggregated dashboard, live analytics, and centralized reporting. Mackin Vision is designed to streamline your school's library operations. Learn more about how Mackin Vision can benefit your school at mackin.com/MackinVision. Schedule your free demonstration and experience the future today.
Do you have some advice for folks who are hearing you? They want to set up this experience and they really do want folks to understand not everything has to have a takeaway objective outcome, as you've mentioned. How do you signpost that? Is that something that you let folks know, hey, we are intentionally not attaching this to an outcome or to a takeaway because? What is the way to do that kind of communication so that folks not only understand it, but value that same kind of philosophy?
I think it's a little bit like learning by doing. The first couple times that we have these family lab sites, the families are stiff. Their shoulders are like in their ears. They're a little stressed because they don't know if they're being watched or observed. I do say things like teachers don't have note-taking devices. Teachers are not like, we're not using this data. We say out loud to them, there is no right or wrong. This is about having fun with your children. They don't really believe you the first time or the second time, maybe the third time they start to, and there starts to be like laughter. I actually have like visual evidence progression of all of this in like my schools that I work in California specifically. And just the level of comfort and the attendance, not only of families at family lab sites, but also of the kids in school across the school year, because their families are now like part of the fabric of the community as a result of coming to these family lab sites where they are learning about the teacher differently too. because the teacher is also modeling that they are not only imparting this kind of information as the sole knowledge holders, but they are also caregivers themselves, and they're sharing some anecdotes or some pictures of their family. Whatever it is, there's like a vulnerability there that happens when it's not product oriented, or it's not like solely embedded in some curricular outcome that happens. And that connection between the teacher and the families then breaks down the walls between home and school. It's very cool to see. And it's not exactly measurable other than in like visuals of pictures of families looking happy, and in, like I mentioned, numbers of children, if you want to consider attendance changing for that reason. It's hard. I think about widening our lenses for assessment, also like all the different ways that we assess, because I've had teachers ask me, can we also use this as an assess? Can we just also give a little rubric, a 1, 2, 3? Nope, we can't actually, not for this. I don't think that we can measure how successful you are at play with your families in these low stakes family lab sites. I think really it is the joy of it. Sometimes the outcome is that you can lean in and teach something to the family that you hoped to impart when it comes to, for example, you can say, this made me think because that's evidence from the text. We try to do that in the literacy classroom also. You're looking for evidence, or you're building a theory around something. This is the reason why. So that's like an extension that you can move to. But beyond that, I think it really just is.
That's, I think, really powerful, because I do think schools often give the message of, hey, we want you to have a good relationship with your child's teacher, but they don't follow up with the how. And this is the how. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think not having the rubric, ensuring that it intentionally does not feel like an evaluation on anyone's part, that is actually how relationships build. And I think that's great to echo that message. You have this wonderful anecdote that you share in chapter 2 that is all about process, what it means to value process. And it reflects on the building of a Lego castle. When it comes to thinking about the power of play, can you tell us a little bit more about lessons that you've taken away from, again, playfulness with your own family?
Yeah, that anecdote was one that still breaks my heart, because I still just, my son teaches me every day. He spent several weeks, I think it was 2 weeks during winter break, building a very large castle. It was a Ninjago castle that he had been gifted by my in-laws for the holidays, and he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't drink, he wouldn't come downstairs. He literally worked on this thing night and day. He was very young. He may have been 7. And he wanted to show it to me when it was done. So he picked the thing up to walk downstairs to show it to me, and he tripped on the last 2 stairs, and he dropped it, and it shattered into a gajillion pieces. And I thought that he was going to freak out, and he did nothing of the sort. He was quiet. He shrugged and said it was fun to build it. I could not handle the disappointment myself for him that he didn't have a final product to show. And then it led me down to an entire rabbit hole of trying to understand how children don't have the same outcome oriented, product oriented mindset that we push upon them year after year, to the point of then making it so that they're not process oriented. And that taught me such an important lesson. So we started doing things as a family, sand mandalas that people build and then blow away. They spend all this time intricately making them. We started to do those kinds of things as families, build a massive structure in the woods together when we take a hike, and then just leave it there and then never turn around or come back to it or even take a picture. Like, it just was the process of doing it together. Or small scale stuff, making something really beautiful and giving it to somebody and never seeing it again. That kind of idea that you are enjoying the creation, the process, the collaboration, the connection with the people that you're making it. Something is happening in your brain when you're doing that. And it doesn't need to always be assessed. It doesn't need to always be overanalyzed to bits and pieces. I don't know. He's still like that. My son is very much not about the final product and very much about the creation. He's a little left-handed creative wizard, but that he's more creative as a result. He's able to generate a lot more as a result. My daughter who is extremely, everything needs to look a certain way because she wants it to look perfect because that's the way that her teacher showed her the model of it, whether that be in a horizontal direction, whether that be like with her name in the right-hand corner. It has to look that way. She's a people pleaser, so she's less innovative. She's less willing to make mistakes and risks. And so who are the leaders of tomorrow that we want, especially in an AI society where those things can be created in a minute? We want the ingenuity. We want the creativity. That's where learning happens. And so I hope everybody remembers that Ninjago Castle example.
It's a powerful story, and I think it's the perfect place for us to wrap on, because the provocation in that anecdote for me is just doing like a quick audit, thinking about the school experience that happens in your community. Are children getting a message about process, that process alone is really valuable? Or are they learning, again, that if that Lego castle breaks, that the process of building it didn't matter? Again, I think there's a lot of messaging that happens within schooling, and it's really great to pause, think about the story that our schools are telling. Thank you so much for talking about that. The book is so rich in anecdotes that provoke thought. Again, the title is Nourishing Caregiver Collaborations, Elevating Home Experiences and Classroom Practices for Collective Care. You'll learn all about it in the show notes. Pick up a copy. Let me know what you thought of it. I absolutely loved it. It's been an honor to speak with you today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.